a way for people to make money, as it were. In fact, we're not about that at all. So moving on to the next slide. And this one, what does that say? Hang on a minute. There's report 2. There we are. That's it. I'm just going to move a thing which says this meeting's being recorded. I've got it. That's gone. So just to talk about the energy business side of things to start with. As I'm sure people will know, who are members who've actually bought shares, the first share offer was in 2015, and that was on 10 commercial and farm buildings. And we had a lot of interest in that. 119 members invested in that. We raised £476,500, and they got 5% annual interest, and then it was over a 20-year period. The money was paid back. The first tranche of payback of capital payback is in the 4th year. So that was the sort of deal, as it were, and that attracted a lot of interest. And 5% annual interest, to use the word interest there, but anyway, 5% annual interest was very attractive at that time. Hopefully it will stay attractive. The second share offer was in 2018, and this was on 5 schools and also a commercial building as well. And we'll hear about all this later on. But as I mentioned before, all profits to go into either project development or community benefit. It should be benefit rather than development there. Just to quickly say, in terms of the performance, we've done very well over the years. I'm sorry about this funny box. I can't get rid of it. Perhaps if I do that. Yeah. Thanks to some sunny months, we've had some good. May of last year was particularly good, which gave us a major boost to our income. So our operating profit in terms of the energy business side of things was in the year in question was in excess of 15,000. That's the operating profit of business. And this means that we can actually devote up to £7,000 towards our community benefit fund and put the rest in reserve. And I've mentioned exceptional payments. I just want to stress that for a moment, because as part of our rules, if there is a death of a member, then that the shares either go to a nominated beneficiary, nominated in the will, that is, or verbally to the relatives, or the shares have to be surrendered and cancelled. And that's, if they're surrendered, we then have to pay. We have to pay out that money. Now, yes, yeah. Yes. How do we do that? Right. So I don't know how people say if they're not. That's the only. Oh, okay. You can see it. I can't see it. So firstly, let's deal with the people in the hall. Are people happy for this to be recorded? Or is anybody not? It's probably the easiest way of doing it. That's okay. People in the hall are happy about that. And are people out in Zoom land happy for this to be recorded? That's true. Have you made a note of that? Okay, so that's important to have that sorted out. Thanks very much, Lucy. That's helpful. We don't want to transgress that. Yes, where was I? I was just saying, in terms of the deaths of people who are invested in NADA Community Energy, and there'll be more of those, obviously, as time goes by. This can cause us problems because in terms of cash flow, it's quite an issue, really. So what we would like is for people to be very clear about who they want their shares to go to on the unfortunate occasion of their death. In other words, if they could have a named beneficiary in their will, that would be very helpful. Because we could then transfer the shares to that person, and we don't have to pay out. The difficulty is if it isn't clear, and the shares are surrendered, and we then have to pay out that money. That can cause major problems in terms of cash flow. We're trying to build up a reserve, but it's it's going to take a while. So just a plea there to, if people can be as clear as possible in their to make it clear to their loved ones, as it were, what they want to happen to those shares. That they are a very attractive investment, as we know, certainly at the moment. Anyway, I think that's enough on that. Taking up too much time. So moving on down. Oh yes, just to say, we will hear a bit later about the project development side of things, particularly the Tisbury Electric Car Club and the Renewable Heating in Schools project. And just to quickly say also that in terms of the Community Benefit Fund, we used the money this time around to, that's last year's money, to put some solar panels on the Tisbury swimming pool, which has been very much welcome. It's not enough to keep the pool nice and warm, but it does help with their electricity bill. So that's really quite a great project to have done. And I think we're there. So now I'm going to hand over to, sorry, another question. I can't see the screen. Yes, I think, yeah, well, that's a good question. Sue, can they have, there's only one owner, there can only be only one owner of each of the shares, but can they split the shares and have some, the rules are silent on that, but I think as long as every share, as it were, has a named owner, I think that's okay. We can check on that. Well, that's a very good question. I've rushed through that a bit, but I'll be happy now to move on to the accounts, and Tim Plumtree is now moving up to the front of the hall. There is a camera pointing at the hall, but it's not showing. Never mind. You can decide which ones you want. I can do it for you if you like.
Page 3. Well, leave that there.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to do this. I'm now handing over the technology to Tim.
Well, everyone has seen, I can't hear a thing. Everyone has seen the balance sheet, so no point going through each item, but the main point of showing you this is just to point out the reduction on the top line, 528 to 500. The difference is 27,000 and change, which is the repayment of the principal from the first share offer, which is 5% every year for 20 years. It's the only place that shows in the account, so that's why it's worth pointing out. See top line there? Unfortunately, that thing's in the way, but it says reduction share capital, I think. Fixed assets, tangible assets, yes. So they go down by 27,000, which is 5%. And the next one, I think, is the profit and loss. That's page 6.
Page 6.
Yeah, there we are.
There we are.
This is a bit more exciting. If I was in public relations, I'd say this is an all-time record. Fantastic performance. Well, it is. Of course, it's an all-time record because we get bigger every year slightly. And this is the first time we've had income from all of the solar panels up and running, which is why it's gone up by 15%. I've got it. Lost my notes. Anyway, you can see it's gone up considerably from 72 to 97. And the expenditure's been pretty well kept under control, except for, sorry. One thing was up, depreciation's there at the bottom, by the way, which is a big item, of course. Well, I can't find it now, but sorry.
But the operating profit
Yes.
is looking good there.
Operating profit of 15,000, looking extremely good, and the amount retained of 10,000 is 10.8, is also very healthy compared to last year. Has anyone got any questions on the accounts? Because as you've all seen them, it's probably the easiest thing is just to take any questions because they're pretty well self-explanatory. Yes, Dick.
Yep. Oh, no, that's part of the restricted funds. It's got nothing to do with the energy business. That's part of the second, the more charitable side of the organisation.
We can show that if you like.
We can show it.
Yes, page 7.
These are the restricted funds. Up on the screen.
Page 7. Can you get it here?
What?
Oh, that's it, is it? Yes, sorry.
So that second one. Can you
Yeah,
do it?
the 62,513 is the balance of the grant at the beginning of the year, with the expenses all listed there, totaling 41,000. So there's 21,117 left. Is that right, Alan?
Yes.
Yeah.
You've got a question, please. But it's better just repeat your question for people because we haven't got the wandering microphone in the audience here. But the income, the grant income for that year is there listed as 62,513.
But it's included. No, it's talking about memberships and rentals.
It was in Hinton Hall, I think. They're in somewhere. No. I thought, well, I'm not going to go down there in this pouring rain.
I think that'd be the final record.
If I may, I think the income.
Sorry,
Can you hear me?
The question from the floor
Hello.
is there are questions about the income.
Sorry, on
Apart from
the income.
grant income, people are
Hello?
asking in the hall here. People are asking, is there anything in these accounts for instance, for donations, for hiring? Money's coming in from the hires.
Well,
Yeah.
the sponsorship is included. That's one income item.
I mean,
And remember-
we didn't get going because we were all under lockdown, more or less for most of this year. So it didn't really get going until later in the summer. Yes, so that's paid out of the grant. That comes out of the grant. No employees. They're all self-employed.
What?
They get paid. Yes, they get paid. Not as employees, though. Any other questions from the hall? What about questions from outside?
Someone asked me about subscriptions. Someone asked me, what are the subscriptions that are mentioned?
Membership. What are subscriptions that we pay? What are they, sir? Can the Zoom people hear this?
No, I don't
No.
think you can hear. So you might have to repeat that.
Well, I'll repeat it. Community Energy England. RECC, yes, that's the thing we joined to do the heat pump. And we need some more clients for that. We didn't get. And Regen Southwest.
Relatively modest increase, but they all add up a bit. Any other questions from outside? Are people putting hat? Gustavo. Oh, I see. It's in the chat. Okay. Have we answered all those questions in the chat, Lucy? Because I can't really see that.
So there's a question from Gustavo saying, is this the level of profit and what we expected it to look like into the foreseeable future?
In the original projections. Yes, more or less, but a lot has changed since then. I think it's pretty much online. Yes.
Any other
I have
questions?
got them there. Actually.
Any other questions from inside the hall on anything that's been said so far? And we'll get more detail as we go when we get into the presentation. But in terms of the money side of things, this is the time to raise any points. And the car club is as you'll hear, it has been knocked sideways really by the pandemic, and it's
I think the Starbucks point in the chat is relevant as well, but these accounts of the
yes, up to the end of March.
Yes,
Yes, you'll see that in next year's figures. And there'll be,
I don't know whether you could all hear that, but the point is that the revenues from the car club, this is only up to the end of March 2021, and the car club didn't get going until after that in any meaningful sense. So the revenues will be in the next financial year. Okay.
okay. I think people are probably happy with that. No? Yeah. No, he's one of the. So, including you as well, so, somebody in the hall was asking about who the paid staff were for the car club, and were they employees? But no, they're not employees as such. They are self-employed people who are contracted to the project. Okay, I think unless there are more questions coming up from outside, no more questions on the accounts, then what we will do, we'll move to resolution 1, which is to receive and approve the accounts for that year, 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 2021. And probably the best way to do this is to see if there's anybody doesn't want to approve the accounts. Well, can we move that those accounts be approved and adopted? And as far as I can see, that's there's a hand up, is there? Where's that? Oh, Suzanne, yes, there we are. So I've got my short range glasses on here. Is that a question, Suzanne? If you unmute yourself, Suzanne, we can hear.
No,
Oh,
it's
there we
to
are.
say that I approve acceptance of the accounts.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's very helpful. And I think that's okay. So what it looks like we can approve those accounts and record those as approved. There is another resolution too, which follows as well from what we were saying about the community benefit fund, and that the directors are recommending we allocate up to £7,000 into the community benefit fund, and that will be spent in this current year that we're in now, 2021-22. So are we happy to approve that allocation as recommended by the directors? Again, I think probably easiest if anybody has a query on that. I want to object to that if you say so now. That's a very good question. The Nadder Valley, broadly speaking, it's a pretty movable feast. It's a very fuzzy edged area, very fuzzy edge, but it's basically the catchment of the Nadder River. But it does extend eastwards into the edge of Salisbury, and westward. It can even go over the watershed into Dorset. We've got a project in Dorset, but anyway, it's very fuzzy indeed. Good question there, Elizabeth. Somebody was asking what the area of the of Nadder. It's what that. I've got to relay that to the people out in the east. What was that you said, Tim? Yes, it's pretty well. Yeah, you're right. 99% is in the Nadder catchment, I think, probably. Okay, well, I think we probably can accept resolution 2. I don't hear any objection to that or see any objection to that. So let's move on. I'm sure you want to. And this is a slightly awkward one. Election of directors. And we're recommending the re-election. Let me just explain. What happens is that 1/3, I think it is, of the directors have to resign every year, and it's the third of them, as it were, who've been directors longest since they were either elected or re-elected. And the two who fall into that position this year are Maggie over there. Raise your hand, Maggie. And we can't get a camera on you, but Maggie's sitting on the table at the front of the hall here, and myself, me. So we could leave the room while you while you vote on this. Oops, sorry. Or are we all happy with it or not? If we're not, say so. There seems to be strong support in the hall. Thanks very much. And out there in the ether, can't see anybody. There's thumbs up, so it looks like thumbs ups. Thank you very much. I think we'll say that's gone through while we can. Thank you very much. It's another. Okay, so now we move on to Richard's presentation. Richard, are you ready? Are you? Oh, hang on. Oh, it's the car club. Change. Yes, we're changing the order, and we're going to go on to the car club, and that's I think Julie. And are you going to come up to the lectern, Julie? And how are you going to see your slides because they're not here? Okay. So there's. So Julie Phillips is going to talk about the car club.
Do you not get the Zoom screen on your?
Probably not.
Excellent. Okay, I'll ignore yours.
You can hear me.
If I go, can you click?
Share screen. No, not share screen.
Julie?
Sharing screen.
Hi.
Hi, okay, yeah, just to let you know, I'm here. Can the hall hear me for when it's my turn?
Yeah. Okay,
Excellent.
lovely. I'll pass over to you. Could everybody hear Gustavo then? I'm just wondering about how to hand over to him.
Testing. I think Zoom can hear me. I'm just checking whether the hall can hear me.
Can the hall hear Gustavo talking? No.
Oh, are you muted, Julie?
Yeah. Now see if you say something. So
Yeah,
we can hear.
testing. This is
Is it-
Gustavo, falling in love with the sound of my own
Gustavo to say
voice,
something
into the
so we
void.
can hear. Ask Gustavo to
Sorry.
Ask Gustavo to say something. And
I
then
am
He
saying
is
lots of
talking.
things. I am
You are-
talking.
No,
Is
they
it
can't
because-
hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh,
Zoom can hear me, but I'm just seeing whether the hall can hear me.
We needed to come out speakers, do we? Ah.
Oh, yeah. That's it.
Oh, what?
There's.
Unplugging the headset and just
Ja-
using the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
computer.
Gustavo, Dave's just turning the speakers on so people can hear in the hall.
NCE, you might have to mute yours.
Testing. Is the hall dancing? I don't see the hall dancing.
We're all dancing. Okay, so my name's Julie Phillips. Okay, Gustavo, can you mute? I think there is an echo anyway. Doesn't get muted. Gustavo, have you muted? Yeah, okay, lovely. So my name's Julie Phillips, to people who don't know me already. And I'm employed to do the community engagement for the car club. They will. Yes, true. Okay. So hopefully everybody can hear me. I will project my voice. I'm Julie Phillips for people who don't know me already, and I'm contracted to do the community engagement for the car club. We're just going to get our logo come up. Or maybe not. There we are. And you can go again. Actually. So I'm going to give you a brief timeline for the car club, just where we've got to, because it's been quite an interesting journey. So if you click again, well, you might need to click again. So I'm going to start from July 2020, because before that, although a lot of work and planning had gone into the car club, the project was frozen by the funders because of the first lockdown. So it restarted after that in July, but because of COVID and because of the lockdown, between August and September, we were all involved in doing demand assessment. The funder was very concerned that before the project restarted for real, that we made sure there was a real demand for the club. And we also had to research other car clubs and how they'd coped with lockdown. That was all completed by September, and in October last year, we got the go-ahead to carry on. So October to December last year were taken up with the practicalities of making the club ready by 2021. And we planned to launch in January 2021. So chargers were installed, the cars were bought, and then in January 2021, there was another lockdown. So we did launch, we did a soft launch, which meant that we couldn't encourage people to join or to do anything other than essential travel. But the difference between the lockdowns were that by January we had the cars and they needed to be driven, just in terms of a maintenance point of view. So we were in a different kind of position. So a few people joined, a few people used the cars for essential travel, but really it wasn't until February, May when the club could launch properly and encourage membership and encourage more use. Again, that is as we came out of lockdown, so it was very gradual. And so we had to do a COVID risk assessment and there were restrictions on use. So we started very softly. And then June to September, so now obviously the restrictions are lifting and we've seen a steady increase in use and membership. So our original plan was a straight line to success. And what became our reality was a little bit more tricky. So essentially this year we've seen a cautious start on a very bumpy road. I'm not going to talk about COVID forever because everybody's sick. But it is one of the factors clearly that nobody planned for a global pandemic. If you want to. So we experienced that freeze in the project and had to do a demand assessment, neither of which we when the project started. We also, to move away from the subject of COVID, had a real battle to find insurance cover. So the insurance business is not very keen on covering clubs, so like car clubs or horses, bikes, actually. So Alison did an astounding job of finding us an insurance policy so that we could go ahead. Installing the chargers and buying the cars, that was a challenge too. In terms of leasing car parking space and making the arrangements for what kind of chargers got put in and who they were run by, that got sorted. And then obviously another challenge was launching. The second planned launch got hit by COVID too. so another lockdown, and the additional work we had to do in terms of a COVID risk assessment, including all of those strategies in the members' inductions, so people know how to in a safe way. So let's move on to a more positive period where people could get on board with the project as the lockdown eased. And we would like to credit the amount of support we've had from the local community. Boat Rights, the estate agents, were the first person to sponsor the project. So you'll see their logo on our cars. We also had a lot of support from Tisbury Motors, who installed all the telematics for us. Even the post office, Ed at the post office, did a lot of advertising for us for free. That picture up there is John McLaughlin, who many of you won't know, but is a branding specialist. So he designed all the logos and branding for the car club. NCE, now I put them on here because apart from the fact that they're the project's parent in terms of giving us a legal status, every single member of the board has volunteered their help free of charge, and very practical everyday things like even leaflet delivery. So I'd really like to thank you all for doing that. And then lastly, a company called Key Echo, who I found on Facebook, and late one night asked them to donate a members free gift. They did. They gave us 60 packs of, and packed them really nicely for us to a value of £14.95 each. So that's the equivalent of over £600. And it's really nice to be able to give members a free gift when they join. So we're very grateful. So the journey so far, and you can do too. We're seeing the pictures of Gordon Sorensen and his daughter Maisie, who won the Naming the Cars competition. So the cars were named after that competition, and the white one is Electra, and the grey one is Artie. So membership, and I don't know whether you can click on the actual word, see. So we've got a few figures here about how the car's been used. It does go really from April, May to now, because we can't really include the first lockdown. And you see on the left-hand side, the biggest graph there is the distance the cars have covered a week. And you can see that there's two key points where it's the highest, but if you look overall, that chart is going up. So the cars are being used more, covering more distance. I think the particular spikes may be related to particular journeys where the cars, in one case, can take longer. So that would be a long unique. Oh, can you go back? I think if you right click, it should be able to click on. Oh. So use, if you click on that. I just thought I'd give you a brief kind of explanation of what the cars have been used for so far. And we are still early days, really, but somebody's had a weekend break in London.
Yep, I'll come down too in a minute.
And also people hired the car to go camping. As well as trips, all-day trip to Glastonbury, and more local trips, sightseeing, like I've got Wardour Castle up there. I know people have hired the car to go to Towerhead, as well as shopping trips and days that you might think of. You might have to go. You can click on the journey so far soon. It will take that. Yeah. Oh. Thank you. So really important part of the project was the transport poverty strategy. So built into the higher fees, there was always going to be a concessionary rate that was for people in finance on a low income. We decided initially to reduce the rate by about 20% for people on low incomes. And it's self-volunteered information. We trust people when they tell us they're on a low income. We don't assess it. So people can join as a concessionary member and get a 20% discount, essentially. However, since we started, and again, Alice Coombs Trust have collaborated with us to offer an even better deal for people in real financial hardship. We can refer them to them, they will pay their membership fee and allocate them a certain number of hours for essential journeys and pay those higher rates as well. So we're really pleased with that initiative. And lastly, another really important kind of factor to the club as well is that we're encouraging a club attitude, a community asset, and we want people to be very involved in the club, not just members. So we started last month with our first members get together, meet and greet, so that people can get to know each other. And we want people to take control of the management of the club as we go forward. So kind of encourage a model that's quite often used in community businesses where people volunteer to help and have a say on how the car club is run, which will become in terms of, although there's members' code of conduct, initial draft of the code of conduct, as demand increases, there'll be decisions to be taken on how we let people hire the cars and what kind of rules or agreements we have in place for that. That was a huge concern in the survey that I carried out under the demand assessment, that the car demand would be so high that you couldn't get a car, or that the same people would be hiring all the time and so the club attitude is really important going forward. Oh, we're back to this. So yeah, don't worry. So lastly, I was going to talk to you about driving into the future, what it holds for us. So firstly, we're coming to the end of Power to Change funding. So the whole project was funded by Power to Change, not only to set up a car club, but actually to develop a rural business model for car clubs that could be used elsewhere as well. As the funding ends, we're hoping to transition.
What's that? Okay. Yep. Fine. All right. That's how it is.
Our main focus at the moment is to grow membership. We've been lucky enough, as of today, we have 36 full members, 5 of whom are concessionary members. But our target's 60, so we've still got some work to do there. And we want to build higher. So many of you, if you're members of the car club, will know that we've developed different hire deals, and we now do a sliding scale of costs. So whereas it was originally £5.50 per hour to hire the car at a standard rate, the price goes down the longer you hire for. So actually, if you hire the car for 4 hours, it's £11, and all day is 22. I'm quoting standard rates. Concessionary members will get their concession off those additional hires as well. So if you're in a low income and you want the car for 4 hours, it's £9. So some really good rates out there. We've also changed hires in terms of availability. So in lockdown, we kept the hires as hourly available, but only during the day, and there were no overnight hires, for instance. We've changed that now, so you can hire the car overnight. We've given you 36 hours if you do that, so that you don't have to rush back at 6 o'clock in the morning to return the car. You can also hire for longer as well. So there's a weekend hire is £60 for 3 days. I don't think you'll beat that with a normal hire car. So we're very much determined to support more people in transport poverty as well. In fact, our concessionary members have nearly doubled in the last week. So that's really good news. Our target is to have 50% of the membership on concessionary rates, because it can make a huge difference. In the research I did, the demand assessment, having a car, owning a car and running it to a certain degree, was on average costing the average household between 2,000 and 3,000 a year, and that's before you put petrol in. So if you were using, this is just an example, one of our cars that 8 hours a week all year and paid the membership, you'd be spending around £1,000. So it's the real opportunity for people to save a significant amount by being a member instead of having it. And I'm going to hand over to Gustavo now, who's going to talk about more about the business model and the wider picture going forward. And after that, both of us can take questions.
Thank you, Julie. Just checking, can the room hear me?
Can you hear him?
I can't hear the room. I'm just going to take that as yes. Great. Yeah, so all of those things have happened, and kind of the important thing that's happening now is that we're building confidence electrification. It won't have escaped anyone's attention that electric cars are flavor of the day, not only because of the fuel issues that are happening right now, but also because of the government's stated aim to roll out electrification. There are still challenges really around chargers, and those of you who drive electric cars will know that you have to have a whole host of apps on your phones, maybe a bunch of cards, because the infrastructure is still problematic. That said, we are, Tisbury, when we started, we had a WhatsApp group. We set up a WhatsApp group for the users of the charge point in the Natter Centre, the existing charge point in the Natter Centre, the council's charge point. There were 5 users of that WhatsApp group, and we used it to arrange between each other who's going to use that charge point. Now there are more people than we even know how to get in touch with. So we know that demand for charge points is going up, but we are there kind of supporting. We have added a fast charger to the, a public fast charger to the village car park, where 2 were installed. One was installed specifically for the car club and is accessible only to the car club. And there's another one that's available for public use. These are the 22 kilowatt chargers. They're the ones that will charge cars more quickly. So we have added to the village's capacity to service electric vehicles, which is a good thing, and we're still just keeping ahead of the actual demand. At some point, demand for chargers is going to keep rising, I suspect. So we really, if we want to keep Tisbury friendly and appealing and easy for people to make the transition, we need to keep finding ways of doing the chargers. At the village car park, the way we did that was in partnership with an organization, which meant that the capital cost wasn't Natter Community Energies. Up at the Natter Centre, the charger there belongs to Natter Community Energy, such that should the car club not need that one, it would still be something that could be made accessible to the community. So there's adding chargers into helping people's journey into into Conference Electricity. There's a WhatsApp group that we use to support electric car club users. We've had Airbnb hosts referring people to the electric car club, sometimes because their guests are electric car users, sometimes because their guests want to use the car club. So we field a whole bunch of charger questions and help people who have questions around it. Just to give you a sense, when we first started buying cars from the Renault dealers, they were struggling to get cars, electric cars out the door. Now there are some dealerships that they have 3 times the interest in electric as they do in fossil fuel vehicles. So the tide really is turning, and we're in a great position to continue helping people, because there will be a logjam around the infrastructure. So we're keeping ahead of the need. The next point I think that's on there is to do with developing rural car club models. And yeah, so the power change funding was to develop rural car club models. And what we've done is we are now, you may recall from last time, NCE Community Energy is effectively a shareholder, a co-owner of what's called a platform cooperative. The technology that underlies how bookings are made, how people access their telephones, effectively belongs, or a share of it belongs to NCE Community Energy. That platform is what we're talking about, making available to other rural car clubs. There was a challenge there in that CAF has found an incredible funding source, and it may be that funding source wants to service a particular user group, so it may not, in fact, it won't benefit Tisbury directly, but there will be a legacy. In all likelihood, there will be a legacy to the work that we have undertaken in terms of developing a rural car club business model. So from the funder's perspective, we have more than met what the funder expected, and now it's about working out how we make things work going on here. There's still a lot of interest in cities and towns and transport hubs, and the money going into this sector is absolutely astronomical. And the trick is to make sure that rural areas don't lag behind. I think it's important that we lead where possible. Don't want to get left behind. And I think the next point is on changing the ownership models. And the general gist here is that the world of vehicles is got 3 drivers that are going to revolutionize it. 1, vehicles are going electric. 2, they're getting smart, which means that they have data that they make available, and part of that is also that they're going digital, so they can be networked. Our current set of cars require additional hardware to make them smart, but we're 1 or 2 generations out from cars just sort of being like your phone, that on the phone itself you could download the sharing app, as it were. So this movement towards different models of transport use and ownership is happening. It's also vital. There's 2.5 million new cars registered in the UK every year. Just swapping those over to electric just moves the focus of the problem we're generating around resource issues. We really need to start reducing the number of cars, and the way we reduce numbers of cars is by sharing them. As I say, a 1-to-1 swap is just, we're going to end up depleting a different set of resources and people. And all of this is about moving towards the zero carbon transport. And I think we're doing that by helping build confidence in it. As I say, kind of the work that we've been doing is the car club, but it is also supporting other electric drivers and would-be electric drivers. We feel, a few calls a month about people who are thinking about moving into electric car and want advice on charging it, or what apps they need, how they figure out what to do when they're on the road. So while the car club is the focus of it, it's become a sort of attention focus as well, that we've become sort of an informal hub for information for other people in the area. And I guess the other thing to note on how we're progressing on the membership development is our initial members were, largely people from the board and kind of allies who wanted to support the club, but really weren't going to be users. Then we moved into a phase of people who were swapping out the car for journeys where they could. But there's also a subset of users, which is really what the I guess the regular revenue will come from, which is users who need this as a service in their lives. You know, there are a lot of users, in fact, there are 3 or 4, even in the past couple of weeks, who have needed this as a backup because their primary cars have broken down or are unavailable for whatever reason. So I think that user group could really easily expand, and those people, when it comes to replacing their car, may actually find that they're moving over into the car club model. And you know, it's great just to have that backup vehicle for a lot of people. And most people have a sort of 8-year cycle of ownership with their vehicles. So it takes a while. There is a, you know, what they would call market education. You know, you have to teach people about the changes in how to use it. That's my cue to get off the microphone then.
So, does anybody have any questions for either me or Gus? I certainly get away. I certainly get feedback. Yeah. Gustavo, have you seen any of that feedback?
Sorry, I've not heard. I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
It's not plugged in. Yeah, and put it in chat.
Yeah.
Can you do it on chat?
But none in the hall, and Maggie. Yes, if we can get onto that. The funding finishes on the end of this year, and you know, we will need to raise funds in order to carry on with the club. It's got to be you know, commercially viable. It's going to be a viable enterprise. So we will have to have money coming in from some source. We are relying on. I don't know if you can hear any of this.
If I can just say, I mean, some of the stuff we didn't go into, so.
We are relying on sponsorship and donations. I'm pleased to say that there's somebody in this hall who has given us some money, which is very kind of Elizabeth. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Has given some money to the car club to help to keep it going. And we are relying really on donations, sponsorship, and if we can get some grants, which is it's very difficult at the moment because so many organisations are applying for the grants from the sort of the various grant giving bodies that are around. You know, they're snowed under. So it's really quite hard, but that's the challenge. I don't know whether people can hear that outside. Any other questions? Any questions from outside this hall into the chat there? I can't read that.
It's all about the Nadiclay sat map.
Oh, I see. Yes. And just to mention also that the Nadder Close one that we've got is not the one you see outside the Nadder, the Nadder Close one. I'm sorry, the Nadder Centre one that we've got. Oh God, it's not the one outside the leisure centre. It's around the side through those gates. That's where our car club charge point is. The Nadder Close one down the bottom of the village is far left-hand corner of the the park there, and that's the double one, which is partly dedicated to our car club, and the other one is is open to the public. So as Julie was explaining. Yes, that would be good to sort of see how that's reported. Okay.
We had an incident now the other day where some people from London came down and plugged into the car club charger because the car was out and they didn't register that it wasn't a public one. And actually their car told them that it was charging, but it wasn't because it's out of town. So I don't know what happened to them when they drove off.
Okay. I think if there are no more questions, we do need to press on because we've got a fair bit. Thanks very much, Julia. That's great. And thanks to Gustavo. And, just please bear in mind that we, to try and spread the word if you can, because we need more people to join up. And at the moment it's only £10, and we need more people to use the cars because they are there available. And we were hoping that this whole petrol thing would be a massive rush on the cars. Well, it's built up a little bit, but they are there because they are immune from all the problems at the petrol pumps. But anyway, let's press on now. We're going to move over to Richard. Where's Richard? Has he gone? Oh, there he is. Richard. Sorry, yes. Richard Eccleston is now going to talk about the energy business side, and in particular I'm going to try and get rid of all these things. If you do know how to work this machine. Can you may need to put the microphone is the most important part of this, I think. I'm not even sure it's working.
Your head's bigger than mine, Alan.
Yeah,
Okay. You obviously got more brains than I have, Alan. Okay, I'll be brief. Oh, there we go. So my report really for last financial year. Hopefully you can see the screen. We've got the same number of sites as we did last financial year. So 16 sites. So all of the second phase sites are up and running now. And in terms of performance, they're all performing. Most of them are performing above what the MCS projection is. The micro generation certification. Yeah. Which is a bit of a, well, I don't know. I do suspect that some of it was a bit of a finger in the air job. But anyway, I mean, they're not a million miles away. And so all but 2 of our sites are outperforming the MCS projection, which is what the installers give us when they outperforming, yeah, overperforming. We've got 2 sites which are underperforming. One is off the site that was first installed, which is Bridsall Farm, and there is an issue there which we're not quite sure what it is. We think it could be the panels are dirty because of the environment they're in, but because of COVID and everything, we haven't been able to get in there to get them cleaned. But before we do that, I actually want to have a look at the panels and just make sure whether that is actually the problem. So again, trying to get up there to see them is a bit problematic. So I've got a friend who is going to fly a drone up there and have a look for me and film them, so that I can actually see whether that is the problem or not. The data that we get from the monitoring isn't indicating any particular problem, so it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. So, I mean, the panels are working, they're generating, but not as well as they should be. Everything else seems to be working well. The Semley School one, again, that looks like it's sort of seriously underperforming. Again, I think that is a projection problem in the first instance, rather than an actual performance problem, because looking at the data we're getting from our monitoring software, it's all working fine. So
There was an issue with the second panel.
well, the Semley was an interesting one. Alan, our chair, worked very hard last financial year to persuade Ofgem to actually pay us for the generation at a part of the site. It's a complicated installation in that there are two installations there in effect, rather than just one. And Ofgem thought that this was a great opportunity to deny us the funding that they originally agreed for us from that site. But Alan was very persistent and made a complaint, and they've had to backtrack. So we are now receiving the funds that we should have, and we've had, you know, all the back payments as well. So that was a real coup for our chair. So yeah.
There'd been an issue as well with this, particularly a lot of schools wouldn't have been operating for a reasonable amount of time over COVID.
I mean, the only issue for us with regard to income is that the schools were not using the electricity that we were generating from the panels. So we weren't getting, because effectively we make money in three ways from our solar panels. One is from the feed-in tariff, which is paid on all the generation from the panels. The other is from the export tariff, which on the larger sites is actually what is exported to the grid and we get paid for. And on the smaller sub 30 kilowatt sites, it's what they call a deemed export. So we get paid half of what we generate. So that's an additional amount, irrespective of whether the energy is exported or not. And the third way we make income as NADA Community Energy from these installations is from the electricity that we sell to the site which is hosting the panels. So in terms of your question, Maggie, obviously we didn't make so much from the sale of electricity because the schools were not using as much when they were shut. I mean, that happens every summer anyway when they're not shut, when they're not open. But yeah, so in terms of performance, no, that wasn't an issue. So really, that is all I have to say. I think the figures speak for themselves. And just to sort of reassure investors that I do keep an eye on the sites on a daily basis, which I can do remotely. You know, so if and when something is going wrong, we can get onto it pretty quickly and get our installer out there to have a look and see what the problem is. I mean, sometimes we don't even need to get the installer out. I can see that the site is not working and can go and reset a trip, or in the case of like Wiley School, ask the head teacher to go and reset the trip to save a journey, and that usually fixes the problem. So over to questions, I think.
Yes, any questions inside the hall or out there? And how do we see the questions coming up in the in Zoom land? So we haven't had any lightning strikes or anything like that then, Richard?
Don't even mention the word. No, not yet. I can't see any questions in the chat. So
the other worry, of course, is volcanoes in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yes, it could be because of the deposition of volcanic ash onto the panels. And
I did look into getting volcano coverage in relation to what happened 2 years ago, and it proved to be completely impractical. But it does exist, but we have to very much trigger for it to be worthwhile.
Yes.
For those in Zoom land, the debate there is whether we should get insurance cover for volcanic ash, and it has been researched by Tim, and the decision was made that it was far too complicated and probably not worth it. Okay, Dick.
Looking at your numbers that I've not seen before, I'm just observing, trying to read the trend 2019, 2021, and trying to see how assembly compares with the rest. It does seem to me that assembly's gone in a very different direction from everybody else. You've got something that's changed in assembly.
Yeah, I agree, and it is slightly confusing because we didn't have all the data last financial year. That the figure in the second column there, Dick, is an estimated figure. So we estimated that it was performing at the rate it should be.
I was looking, I must say, the whole chart. I didn't look at the estimated in brackets in the lower part of the chart alone. Are you saying that estimated applies to all of the schools in the bottom part of the chart?
Yes, yeah, that was an estimate. I mean, some of it was say, for example, I mean, you can see with Nectar 2, I've just estimated it that it was, performing at what the MCS projection was. We did have some data for the other schools based on meter readings and so on, but the achieved performance in 2021 that is as is. So that's where we are. I mean, we'll keep an eye on Semley, but I think the thing with Semley is because of the attitude and the positioning of the panels, it doesn't really fire up to its full performance at the beginning of the day because of the way they face. So you don't get a lot of generation early on in daylight because of the way they're facing. And I suspect there's a bit of a mismatch between what they were projecting and what is actually realistically achievable. Hope that makes sense.
Thanks very much. Richard, do you want to introduce the next item, which is the renewable heat for schools?
Oh, I would like to introduce the next item, which is renewable heat for schools, about which I know very little. A couple of technical. Oh, I think there was a question in the chat actually, Alan. Okay, that's a question from Susan. How often do we clean the panels? The answer to that is we try not to clean them at all because it costs us money. And it's only really if we get a problem that we would clean them. The advice from the installers is that rainwater is the best thing to clean panels. The only slight challenge I think we may have at Bridsor is that, again, the attitude of the panels, they're quite flat on the roof rather than pitched, steeply pitched. So when the rain does fall on them, it's probably not washing all the grime off as it does, for example, on my panels at home, which have been up there for 10 years now, and we certainly never bothered to clean them, and they still perform optimally. So in answer to your question, Susan, only when we need to. Hope that makes sense. There's a bit of for those in Zoom land, there's a bit of beetling around going on here on the technical front. So I'm sure that any moment now you will be able to receive the information about the. Here we go.
Okay.
How are you going to mic you up? Is your thing working?
Can everybody hear me on Zoom? See anybody? Can everybody hear me? Yes, brilliant. So Emma can't be with us tonight, so I'm telling you about the Renewable Heating for Schools project that Emma Worth and I did last year. We had installed solar panels on 5 local schools in the previous year, and we wanted to push forward with the decarbonisation of these small rural schools. So Emma worked with NCE to apply for funding from the Rural Communities Energy Fund, known as RCEF, to look into renewable heating for 6 schools. Which are these 6 schools? Which is St Peter's, Wiley, and Semley and St John's, which is where we'd put solar panels on the previous year, and Coombe, Bissett and Warder, which were different and new schools, Warder obviously being very local. We heard we had been successful in our funding bid just before the first COVID lockdown, which obviously made everything a lot more difficult. We worked closely with Salisbury Diocese's estate manager, Martin Kemp, on the Solar for Schools project, and look forward to working with him on this project, but he became unwell and retired and handed over to Olivia Evans, who was young and new and very enthusiastic and has been brilliant. Slide. During lockdown, it was very difficult to gain access to the schools to carry out heat loss assessments, thermogeological assessments and installer surveys. Warder School found it particularly difficult, and therefore we agreed to replace Warder in the project with St Gregory's School in Marnell, as the Salisbury Diocese were keen to look at replacing the whole heating system, and they had some funding for their internal heating. You can see on this photo of the inside of the school, the radiator at the back there was actually installed in about 1912 and was really rubbish. And the children often had to go home from school on cold days when the heating packed up. And you can also see they have a lovely big playing field, which is lovely for putting a ground source heat pump in. This was something we saw across all the schools, as many are old buildings and the heating systems were often old and inefficient and hadn't been looked after very well. And the staff didn't always know how to use them properly. All but St Peter's were on oil-fired heating, with St John's also having a biomass boiler, St Peter's being on the gas grid. The stakeholders and the schools were a very important part of this process. There were this is from a meeting at St Gregory's, and here we have the head teacher with the blonde hair, Debbie, several internal heating engineers, and the installers from Southwest Heat Pumps, a diocesan surveyor, and Emma Worth, who took the picture. I was obviously in the background here doing the administration and acting as a go-between between NCE and Emma. Southwest Heat Pumps was the preferred installer, as they're very experienced, very good value for money and efficient, and they communicated very well with Emma and I. They've been established since 2009 and have installed over 300 ground source heat pumps, are accredited and certified with all the relevant parties. At this point, communication was very important between all stakeholders, especially with lockdown making it so difficult to organise meetings and keep everybody informed as to what was going on. We were also watching the government's renewable heat incentive scheme, which we weren't sure what was happening with, and they did eventually announce that they were discontinuing it, which made obviously the finances of any possible project a bit more difficult. This is just a little slide to tell you about the particular heat pumps that were Southwest Heat Pumps particularly use. There were detailed quotes and explanations from all of the installers about the technology that could be used. This Clausius range is extremely well designed by this guy in Spain who works for a university, and they keep everything to the highest quality, and it's a particularly good system. Ground source heat pumps quite often work by drawing heat from the ground across an area like this one in this picture, but a lot of the schools, because they had playing fields, we could do boreholes and go deep rather than spreading out, which meant it was quite efficient use of land, and we wouldn't necessarily encroach on the school playing fields too much. Yep. And this is St Gregory's Primary School, which was the one that this school, because it's in Dorset, when we discovered the renewable heat incentive wasn't going to be around anymore, we discovered there's government funding called Salix funding. Unfortunately, NCE couldn't apply for this funding. It has to be the schools themselves or the council or the diocese. So Dorset County Council applied for Salix funding and happily were awarded it, which means they are going to be going ahead with an installation at St Gregory's Primary School in Marnell. Wiltshire County Council unfortunately didn't apply for Salix funding for schools, although they did for other community buildings. And the diocese tried to apply for funding, but were not awarded any. We did look into alternative funding ideas such as hire purchase agreements, but these have worked on a school in Brighton, but it was a private school which was obviously open weekends and holidays, so they were using a lot more of the heating. Yeah, so this picture shows little yellow dots are borehole placements, and there's a little site building, the plant room at the side. Emma had realised that there was room at St John's School in Tisbury for a large collector that could feasibly service the school, the Nada Centre and any houses planned for the old sports centre site. Emma and NCE are in talks with Wiltshire Council and Tisbury Community Land Trust about a possible heat system for this whole area. That's very much for the future. Any questions?
Any questions from who comes? And or outside as well. Have we got things on the chat? Good. I think you can see it on there. If you want. Just in case
Any questions?
No, but I mean, can you see in the chat?
I can't see any, no.
No, I don't think there are any.
No. We have, this is definitely a very new area for anybody to be doing any research. There didn't seem to be any more research or projects like this anywhere in the country. This was all very cutting edge. Yes.
How much of cost, what sort of scale of cost are we talking about?
I think it worked out at about 150,000 per school to install. Yeah.
There aren't any questions. I don't think there are. Can't see any coming up yet. Let's move on to external links. I think that's Maggie Paul, who is our main link to us anyway.
Just one.
Any here? Any here? This won't be very long. This is from the auspices of Nada Community.
Muted. So
I don't know when that happened. They were hearing you start.
all right. I'm just talking about Wiltshire Climate Alliance, which is very, very good. And we kind of go to meetings, and obviously it's been on Zoom most of lockdown. Alan and I, particular members of that, we are an organisation, and they also have a very strong energy group within that. And it's interesting because we can, as I said, get information, tell other people what we're doing, and it's very supportive, which is great. And the last thing really is to talk about green drinks. Now, green drinks in Tisbury has been going since before NADA Community Energy. We've been going for about 8 years. Just a few people getting together once a month in the boot to just talk about any green issues. Again, over lockdown, we had to do it on Zoom, which, you know, has its difficulties. But the one advantage of having it on Zoom was that we were able to get speakers to come and give some very, very interesting talks. Through some links I had in Salisbury, we managed to get a very good talk back in about January, February on research on climate change from a very distinguished guy who used to be a professor at Porton Down, who came and gave a very interesting talk about, well, climate change in general. We also had another talk about carbon capture and how that might be able to be used in the future. And we also had a talk about hydrogen. And so, you know, it's interesting in terms of just interest. We also had another friend of ours, Chris Walford, who came when we were back at the boot in the early summer. He came and talked about the work that he used to do with fuel poverty all over the southwest of England. Now he's not working for that organisation, but also he gave us a little glimpse of what his thoughts are on COP26 coming up, which is really good. We've also had talks about recycling and electric cars. And the most recent meeting we had was this week, and we had someone come and talk about their experience of using Tisbury Electric Car Club, which is great. So anyway, all in all, Green Drinks is going from strength to strength. Sometimes we have a lot more people than others, but it's really good. So that's really, you know, us about our external links. We're trying to kind of keep that going. Yeah. But once a month, usually the last Tuesday of the month, we're in the boot in Tisbury. Okay, thanks. That's about it.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions on our external links? Which, as Maggie says, are really useful. And that fits into the bit of the work of NADA Community Energy, which is about that whole awareness raising thing and the whole project development. It's all part of the work of NADA Community Energy. And then there's the whole project development side, and what is the next item looking ahead? I haven't got my agenda. Right. And unless there are questions coming in from chat, I think we can just slip neatly into the looking ahead thing, if that's all right. And really just to say, we've touched on quite a few things. Talked about the possible district heating idea up at the top of the village, Tisbury Village, using the school playing field and perhaps the community land trust. If it goes through with the old sports centre site, that will be very exciting. That's a possibility. in terms of looking ahead. Another possibility is the idea we're exploring, which is looking at solar streets again in Tisbury. A lot of this is Tisbury centred, and we must obviously bear in mind that we're much broader than Tisbury, but within Tisbury there are two particular streets which are ideally placed for solar panels, and that's Queen's Road and the Avenue, where the orientation is pretty well perfect for solar panels, and there's quite a lot of low-income housing there as well. People in fuel poverty. It's about 60% council owned. We've been working with Nick Errington, the local councillor, and looking at the ownership of those properties. So it's something like 60% council owned, and the rest is private ownership. But we're hoping to get people talking about the possibility of doing a job lot in terms of getting, as it were, a bulk installation of solar panels with or without batteries. Prices are coming down all the time, and these things take a long time to work through the whole planning thing. So by the time we get to some actual putting bits of kit on roofs, the prices will be much lower, but we could still get a good deal. And there are examples from Bath, I think it is, and Bridport, and one or two other places where they've had very good deals getting much cheaper installations on people's roofs if it's all done as a bulk effort. So that's another thing we're looking at. Well, it could be. I mean, we haven't looked at ways of financing that yet. It may be that if people can't put up their own money for that, which of course the people who are in fuel poverty can't, then we would try to raise the money through either through grants or donations or possibly a share offer. It all depends. What we don't know yet, the big unknown, is what the government's going to do in terms of government grants for these things, to replace things like the feed-in tariff, for instance. We just don't know. There may be an announcement on that this coming month. Big question mark there. So I think those are the main things in terms of looking ahead, but we're always horizon scanning to see what new ideas, and this is part of the reason for connecting with these other networks. This is some very good ideas are coming up all around the country, and we try and tune into those and just see what could work for us here in. And there's certainly a lot of interest amongst people on our mailing list and elsewhere for another share offer. People are interested in that. What we don't know, again, is what's going to happen to inflation in the country, because if inflation starts going up alarmingly, which it could well do, then of course suddenly share offers at 3 or 4 or 5% become less attractive. So it's all a bit of a juggling exercise. But anyway, those are the sorts of things we're thinking about. So are there any comments or questions from either inside the Victoria Hall or out there in Zoom land? We've gone on a bit. We've gone slightly over the time here, but I hope you found that interesting. There is a lot going on. It's much more than just the solar panels and getting sort of returns on investment. There's a lot more going on, and that's what we want to expand that other sort of development work, really. And also at the same time, we must always bear in mind that we are non-profit making, and that the monies we make, any surplus monies we make, go back into the community for the benefit of the community, which is why we are a community benefit society. But if there aren't any other comments or questions, nothing coming up on chat. Thank you all very much indeed for coming along. We're either coming along physically to the Victoria Hall, suitably spaced, and those who have joined us by Zoom. That's excellent. So we'll write up the minutes. Don't forget. One thing I did want to say was, as Maggie was talking about the Wiltshire Climate Alliance, Wiltshire have got a consultation out at the moment on their climate strategy, which they are trying to formulate. They are looking for comments on that. The closing date, I think, is the 17th of October. And so it's very important that people individually and also as part of their own community organizations respond to that consultation document, very crucial. And there's also a petition, which they're trying to get as many signatures as they can. So do check on the Wiltshire Climate Alliance website and sign up to that. That would be good. So that's my sort of... Yes, and Yeah. Yes, I don't know if people could hear that in Zoom land, but basically it's about trying to get Wiltshire Climate, Wiltshire Council to commit to moving more quickly for a start, because they've got lots of good ideas, but it's moving very slowly. But to commit to the what did you say? Green is part of every policy, whether it's housing or whatever. You know, all the various things they get involved with. There's the green element should be in all of those. And we went along to the area board, the Southwest Area Board, and made that very point. And that has now been written into the Southwest Area Board's minutes. And there is a commitment to do that. So that's an achievement. A lot of talking, not a lot of action, says Maggie from the front table here. Anyway, okay, thank you all very much indeed. That's very good of you. And we'll see you again next year when it'll be a much smoother operation and go like absolute clockwork. Thank you. Thank you.